Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us at today's community expert meeting. I'm going to start that again since we're at the beginning and I already messed that up. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us at today's community expert meeting. I'm Amanda Leah, and I'm stoked to introduce a very inspiring guest. He's an ex-vegan of 4.5 years who lived in Hawaii with a vegan community for 2 of those years. He experienced a poor state of health as a result of that diet, and now he's known on YouTube for sharing his personal accounts as a vegan and beyond veganism, along with interviews of other experts and self-experimenters in the vegan and carnivore health movement. He has experimented with many forms of carnivory since coming back to animal foods, and he's here to tell us all about it. Thanks so much for meeting with us, Drew Morgan.
Hello, everybody.
We're thrilled to have the chance to chat with you, Drew, and we'll get into the chat a little bit later so you can answer some of the members' burning questions. But first, why don't you start by sharing your journey to carnivore with us?
Perfect. Thank you, Amanda. So my name is Drew Morgan, everybody. Those of you who haven't seen me. I started my YouTube journey maybe 4.5, 5 years ago, at least. I wanted to basically document my path as a vegan. And I really, when I went to that whole world, I never expected to leave that community. So for those of you who are here in the Meat RX community, maybe you've never been vegan or even thought about it in your life, and you're like, why is this vegan guy or ex-vegan guy here? Well, trust me, I'm going to tie it all together. And it really has so much to do with what you guys are studying and how you guys are eating. And if all you take away from what I have to say here is that carnivore, I believe, is an excellent weight maintenance and weight loss and muscle maintenance diet. It's probably one of the best in the world. It's one of the best that I've ever experienced. And if that's all you hear, then like you could turn this off now for all. But what I wanted to say is that, about 5 years ago, I went vegan, maybe almost 6 years ago now. I have been into fitness since I was 18 years old. I lived a pretty standard party boy lifestyle from about 16 to 28 years old. I came into veganism from the perspective of long-term health gains and digestive relief were pretty much my 2 main goals. I wasn't really sold on the fact that it was like a performance enhancing diet, so to speak. But I was willing to experiment with it and give it a chance. And, the thing with going vegan in a lot of these diets and even carnivore to a certain extent is you do tend to get some false positives in the beginning. So before you wonder why I was so crazy for being vegan for 4.5 years, well, the first couple of years were actually pretty good. I experienced a lot of the benefits that people talk about when going vegan. I even had really good blood tests 2 years into being vegan, high testosterone. I had, at the time, I thought it was very important to have very low LDL and very low cholesterol. So I was very proud of these numbers. They weren't dangerously low, but they were on the lower end. And that was after only 2 years of veganism. So the reason I got those blood tests, kind of to back up, I got a really bad injury. So I was curious about the blood tests. I specifically asked my doctors to let me take those tests, and they had to sign off on it and everything like that. And yeah, they turned out good, but I had a really bad ankle injury, and I sprained my ankle in Hawaii. And basically this injury it did not heal. 6, 8, 9 months later, I was still sort of limping on this ankle, and I had never experienced an injury. I've broken bones before. I've broken wrists. I've sprained the same ankle actually before, and it healed in like a matter of 2 weeks. So this was a worse injury, but it also was an exceptionally long healing time. I just did not understand how it could be possible that this wasn't working. And here I am on this Superman vegan diet, right? So I'm thinking like I should be feeling this very rapid road to recovery. My confidence was still high at this point. The veganism was the right thing to do. And again, there was those false positives along the way that sort of led me to believe that it was the right path for me. So kind of going back to the timeline of things, the ankle injury and the blood test was about 2 years into the veganism. Moving forward, I was really starting to see how my digestion was sort of gunking up. It just really wasn't working out for me anymore as I started to eat more food and focus on sort of like moving away from the early days of veganism when you're just really happy to try all these different fruits and stuff like that. And you really start to get a feel for what you like to eat. And as you do that, your you're realizing that maybe those fruits and stuff like that, I was sort of losing muscle mass. I was losing weight, stuff that I didn't want to lose. I didn't come to veganism for weight loss. So for me to be losing muscle mass I didn't have to lose in the first place was not a good sign for me. So I started to adapt my diet to more of a standard, eating style, and less fruits, more, burritos and tortillas and tempeh and all this stuff that people are constantly promoting for muscle gain and keeping your physique in shape and stuff like that. So I started to consume those things, and digestion just got worse and worse. So here I am, 2.5, almost 3 years into veganism. Digestion is terrible. The ankle's still busted. And I'm thinking, okay, I need to take some pretty drastic measures here. What's left on the table? Obviously eating meat is not safe, right? In my mind at the time. And veganism is starting to not work for me. So what do I do now? Well, that's when I decided to do a juice fast. So I did a 30-day juice fast. For those of you who don't know what a juice fast is, you're literally drinking nothing but juice. So that might sound completely stupid to most people. And I'm sure, you're probably on the right track for that. But if you go on YouTube, there's no shortage of juice fasting gurus out there, water fasting gurus out there. So what I found was a few different people, namely I'll name him. His name is John Rose. He has quite a big channel these days. And I found him in the early days of his YouTube channel. Well, he's a very inspirational character, charismatic guy he's in his 60s. He has basically a six-pack. He looks great. And he's sitting there talking about how juice fasting is going to essentially cure whatever digestive issues you have. And the reason that, according to his ideology, the reason that you're not surviving well on the vegan diet right now, you're not surviving well on the raw vegan diet right now, is because your body is not capable of digesting and absorbing the nutrients in those foods. Well, his mindset was that the reason it's not able to digest those foods and absorb those foods is because of previous damage done to your digestive system, to your intestinal tract. And so that started to make sense to me. I'm like, okay, here I am. I'm 30 years old now. I've done a lot of damage to my body in the previous years. I drank alcohol a lot for 10 years. I did all these things, and maybe I've done permanent damage to my digestive system. So why not give it a chance to heal by removing all food, all fiber, just going pure juice. And by the way, the juice fast, he calls it a juice feast because you're not actually trying to lower your calories. You're actually trying to maintain body weight, which is very difficult to do with juice. You could drink like a gallon of orange juice a day and you're still only hitting like 1,800 calories. So you're still going to probably lose weight, which I did. But I attempted not to anyway. So here I am attempting this juice fast. I'm sold on the idea. I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe this juice fast will heal my digestion. So, first 2 weeks in, I'm just eliminating all this stuff out of my body. Again, more false positives. So I'm thinking to myself, how am I still going number 2 when all I'm drinking is juice? No fiber, nothing. Literally not a bite of food for an entire month. And stuff is still coming out of me. And I'm thinking, wow, this is old matter that needed to come out of there somewhere, right? Well, again, this is where the mindset is, trying desperately to heal your body from a diet that isn't working for you in the first place, namely the veganism. So 30 days go by. I'm starving at this point. I've lost 10 pounds and I'm weak. I just basically can't work out anymore. And, the starvation is basically setting in. So I say, okay, I'm cutting the water fast now, or the juice fast now, and I'm going raw vegan. So I start eating raw vegan foods, huge salads, big fruit meals, stuff like that. I'm trying my best to get a solid amount of calories in, like 2,500 calories a day. It's a big struggle. Eating raw foods is really tough on digestion. You're eating massive volumes of food and it's just not hitting the spot. So it can taste good, but it's not going to satisfy you. And we'll get back to the satiation of food later because that's a very important part of all this stuff. So raw veganism, I try that for 30 days. By the way, I'm doing enemas the entire time. So because I couldn't go to the bathroom. So I was constipated like crazy. I ended up doing a bunch of enemas to get the things moving, and that worked. But on a positive note, I felt for the first time in my life what it was like to have very, very good digestion once the enema was relieving everything. I felt what it was like to have an empty colon. This is going to sound very strange to most people, I'm sure, but I had lived most of my life with a bloated colon. I didn't know what that was. I just thought that basically food kind of made you uncomfortable after you ate it. And that's just the way that life was meant to be. Well, after I started experimenting with the enemas and the juice fasting and all that stuff, I kind of got a glimpse of what it was like to have a very empty stomach and a very empty colon. And I liked that feeling because it just felt nice. There was no disturbance there. So once I dropped the raw veganism and I went back to just sort of regular vegan food, I went back to the fruits again. Went back to the smoothies, stuff like that. Now, I realized that I could actually maintain that feeling of the clean, empty colon as long as I ate mainly water-rich foods. I wasn't eating much beans or those really satiating foods that you can get on a vegan diet. Let's say like the beans and potatoes and stuff like that. I actually had to cut most of that out. So, I went maybe 6 more months. I continued to struggle with weight gain. I was working out vigorously at the time. I was living in Hawaii at this point. And I moved in with a group of vegan community friends, and I saw how they ate. We all ate very similarly. Nobody was eating protein powders. Nobody really worked out. Nobody was really into fitness. So I didn't stand out from the crowd as weak or small or anything like this, because my peers were also out of shape. The guys were skinny and sort of malnourished looking, and I was also skinny and malnourished looking. At this point in my journey, I had lost about 23 pounds since I started veganism. If you count the first year or two of veganism, then you count the juice fast and you count the raw veganism. I mean, just that period alone, those 60 days, I lost 15 pounds rapidly, lots of muscle loss. I was very, I was emaciated. I looked bad. There's pictures of me. You can see all my neck bones up here. And I look like a skeleton. I did not look like myself anymore. So I wanted to work out. I started to get my mind back, and I wanted to, hey, let's get some muscle mass back. Let's get back into old form. Let's see how good veganism really is, right? So I jump on the whole food, plant-based vegan diet again, vigorously working out, doing all kinds of calisthenics. And I actually started to, at first I struggled. I really struggled. I couldn't even put on more than 2 or 3 pounds in about a 3-month period. So I ended up, saying, okay, you know what? I give up. I'm going to buy protein powder. And so I went and I got some Vega protein powder from Amazon. Had it shipped to me in Hawaii. Real environmentally friendly there. And so I was sitting there consuming, industrial amounts of plant-based protein powder to essentially supplement the very minute amount of protein I was getting on a daily basis on the actual whole food plant-based diet. Because for those of you who don't realize how deplete whole food plant-based protein sources are, I mean, you're going to struggle to hit 60 grams a day. You really are. If you're eating a lot of fruit and you're not solely focusing on beans and tempeh and these really boring foods to eat, you're not going to get any protein. So I was basically eating a 1-to-1 ratio of protein powder and whole food plant-based protein. So at that point, I actually started to gain a little muscle. I started to gain a little bit of weight, maybe like 3-4 pounds, 5 pounds. And I was like, all right, I found the thing. All I needed was a little protein. Okay, I get it. I have this unnatural desire to gain muscle mass. And so I'm going to do what it takes. So I'm out there, I'm gaining muscle mass, but my gains capped at a very low level. Like, I'm 5'10". I have been much heavier in the past in terms of strength and size. I've been up to 183 pounds in the past, albeit mostly fat. But I came into veganism at 168 pounds. And here I am working my butt off, doing all kinds of workouts. My whole life was basically dedicated to fitness and vegan food at this time. And I can only get up to 143 pounds. So I was pretty lean. I had a 6-pack. I was like, this is working out, but I can't get any bigger and I can't get any stronger. What is the deal here? So I said, all right, you know what? It's time to kick this diet into overdrive. I'm going to start just eating whatever it takes to get bigger now. And I will even sacrifice digestion a little bit to do so. So we're about 6 months after the juice fast ended at this point, right? I jumped back onto like very nutrient dense vegan foods. I'm starting to eat granola in the morning. I'm putting chia seeds all over everything. I'm drinking soy milk nonstop. Yeah, peanut butter with every smoothie, just dunking it. I'm grabbing what do you call it? Uh, MCT oil, putting that into everything. So I'm just trying to fatten the whole thing up. And vegans have this ideology. It's part of their ideology. Most of them, the whole food plant-based movement, is that you want to eat very low fat. So for those first 4 years, 3.5 years, I was eating very low fat. Probably about 10 to 20% of my calories were coming from fat, no more than 20%, mostly 10%. So the final year, I had kicked that fat up to about 20 to 30%. And I finally started to gain weight. I started to gain weight. I actually took that little 143-pound body up to about 156 pounds. And so I was realizing along the way that, my performance really wasn't going up. I was basically getting only fat gains around my midsection. I wasn't getting any stronger, really. I was not gaining any strength. But my body just started to look worse and worse. And I started to have less and less energy. I started to take naps in the afternoon. I was falling apart. I really was. And, as time went on, my digestion just got worse and worse. And I started to realize I hated what I was eating. I got to a point, around 4 years into veganism at this point, that I wasn't looking forward to my next meal. I was just like, oh no, I don't even want to eat it really. And I was trying to make my meals as compact as possible. What does that mimic to you? But more on that in a minute. I started to make my meals as compact as possible. I was trying to fit as many calories and as much protein as I could into the smallest bowl that I could, basically, because that's all that I could stomach. And as I did this, time progressed, digestion got worse because these foods were very fiber rich. I was eating a lot of beans. I was eating a lot of granola and oatmeal, these type of things. Things were just not interacting well at all. And I find it funny that a lot of critics in the vegan community will say, well, a lot of these ex-vegans, they didn't consume enough lentils, enough this or that. And I ate all of those things. Well documented. I documented them on Chronometer. I did all of the steps. So here I am, 156 pounds, miserable digestion. Not only that, but the libido started to take a hit, big time took a hit. I've never experienced anything like that before. Basically, desire down a lot. And when presented with the opportunity to actually do something, let's just say that the flag was not sailing. This thing was not working anymore. So I was basically at a loss for words. I really was now wondering what was going on with my body and the diet. And I wasn't questioning my past at this point. I wasn't questioning what I did 5 years prior before veganism. I was questioning the vegan diet at this point. I was wondering what the heck was going on because, there's no way. If the vegan diet is so good, then how am I still sick 4 years in? How am I feeling this way 4 years in? I should be like a rocket ship, ultimate health at this point, glowing vitality. I'll tell you something that one of my best friends told me on a trip back to California because I had lived in Hawaii. Here I am thinking I'm like Mr. Tan, cool Hawaii guy. I come back home. One of my best friends, we go out. We went on a cruise for my brother's bachelor party. And I get all dressed up one night because it's going to be like our dress up night. We're going to the steak restaurant. I was still vegan. I wasn't eating the steak, but we went to the steak restaurant within the ship. And I thought I was dressed really nice. And my buddy looks at me and very seriously, he says, "You look like you've been sleeping outside." Like, boom, that hit me so hard. Because that wasn't just a knock on my clothing or anything like that. That was like a knock on like the quality of my physicality, my face, my skin quality, my hair. This was like a very deep remark that he could make to me. It really stuck with me. So when I did go back to Hawaii, again, like I said, I was questioning the vegan diet. I was questioning everything. And that's when I saw the Sean Baker, Joe Rogan interview. And I said, okay, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. Carnivore, that is so stupid. You're eating 100% meat. Don't you guys know that that is so dangerous for you? Don't you guys know that it's going to cause you heart disease and atherosclerosis and all this stuff, all this information that the vegan doctors have told me for the past 5 years? Don't you guys know this stuff? Like, how can you be that dumb? And here I am looking at this guy who's fit in his 50s, setting world records on the rowing machine and whatnot, strong as a bull, setting this example. And, you know, ex-military, who I trust very much. I trust people's opinions that are like that. And yet here he is on Joe Rogan showing the results, positive results of his diet. And then I started to like, okay, I stepped back a little bit. I kept watching interviews, and I was looking for cracks in this diet. I was looking for the negative reviews. And as I kept researching, all I found was positives. All I found was people talking about the positive results of this. And I had experienced keto before, but I had never experienced straight up zero fiber, zero fiber, 100% animal foods diet. So I decided that, maybe this isn't so crazy. I saw the Jordan Peterson stuff, the Michaela Peterson stuff. I kept going down the rabbit hole of Carnivore, and I decided that maybe it was worth giving it a shot, because at this point, that the amount of fiber I was eating, I was starting to put the pieces together myself that the fiber may have been an issue for me. And I was desperate. I was really desperate to try anything. So I decided to jump into Carnivore. I did a little planning. I found out where I could get some grass-fed meats around me in Hawaii, because I was still living there. I was still living in my vegan community, in my vegan household. I lived with all vegan roommates. All of my friends in Hawaii were vegan, every single one of them. We had big vegan potlucks. We'd have 20, 30 people there rotating around each other's houses. We'd all hang out all night eating vegan potluck. Woohoo. Everybody with horrible digestion afterwards, literally. And we always talked about it. Everybody talked about it. And so I said, screw it. I'm gonna do Carnivore. So I jumped on board. I had eggs and a pound of beef for my first meal. And I remember having satisfaction like I've never had before. I felt a tingling in my brain, no joke, and tingling in my fingertips. And I felt this like sense of peace inside, like, oh my God, that hit the spot, not just from a taste perspective. The taste was okay, but it's because I didn't cook it really amazingly. But the feeling I got after the meal was a really good feeling. And when you're eating vegan food, you typically don't feel good after you eat the meal. It might taste good in the moment. You might stuff your belly full and be like, oh, some people like that feeling. I hate that feeling. But after you eat vegan food, you typically don't feel that amazing. Now, after I ate that first meal of beef and eggs, I felt amazing. I felt so good. I felt like almost like a high for the rest of the night. And, we're all mature adults here, so I'm going to tell you what happened that first night. Now, you could consider this false positives if you want, but I don't consider it a false positive. I went to bed that night, 4 a.m. I woke up out of dead sleep, and I was incredibly erect. Okay. This is a detail that must be shared because it's very critical to the information of this entire story. That's something I hadn't experienced in a long time. Most men know all about, night stiffness, if you will, morning stiffness. These are things that we're used to growing up our entire lives. And when that goes away, it sort of fades away slowly. It faded away slowly for me as a vegan. It faded away so slow that you don't notice it. But then when it's completely gone, you're thinking to yourself, that's interesting. And when it comes back, you certainly notice it. So that's what happened to me. A lot of people have, night emissions, nocturnal emissions, whatever you want to call them, wet dreams. And that didn't happen to me, but it was close. And was a very strong indicator to me that what I was eating was putting something back into my body that needed to be there. And from that point on, I did another 40 days of pure 100% legitimate carnivory. I did my best to basically consume the highest quality meats I could, the most fat that I could. I was embarking on a brand new diet. I hadn't eaten meat in over 4.5 years. So I'm over there cooking stuff in the Instant Pot, and I'm cast iron grilling stuff. My vegan household is really angry with me. 2 of my roommates moved out the first week because I was grilling meat on the stove. So I really went against the grain there in Hawaii because everybody was vegan. And as soon as I started to get these results and this relief, this digestive relief, you know, I was almost scared that I was going to get sick, like a food poisoning after consuming that first meal. And I never got sick. I felt amazing. I felt amazing after every meal. Now I want to be clear, full transparency. I did have a little bit of diarrhea after some of the larger fatty cut steak meals that I had the first few weeks. It happened maybe 4 or 5 times. And then after the 5th time, it was done. I just had excellent digestion after that. I did not have any more diarrhea. It was always very clean. I had no gas. I had no bloating. I was so happy with those results. And I documented, I continued working out that first month too. And I gained strength while losing some weight. I lost a little bit of fat. I gained strength in a period of 30 to 40 days. And so I was really impressed with this. And there was no way I was going back to veganism at that point, just for the digestive relief alone. And at the end of those 40 days, I actually moved back to California. I started to relax a little bit on the full carnivory. I started to eat rice and hamburger buns here and there. I know it's a sin in the community, but you know, for me, it was I was 95% carnivore for the first year. And I did consume a little bit of rice. I consumed a little bit of hamburger buns, like I said, you know, condiments. I wasn't too strict on those type of things because I wanted to, I had just been vegan for 4.5 years. I didn't want to buy into another, I didn't want to buy into any other ideology. I wanted to go based on results. And this is like my main message for everybody through my social media, through my Instagram, through my YouTube, is I tell people just to go with the feedback of your body. And I think if most vegans would listen to the feedback that their body is honestly giving them, they wouldn't stay vegan for very long. It has a lot to do with the sort of cult brainwashing of the social media around veganism, you know, the shame and the guilt tactics that they use to kind of hammer people into saving the animals and saving the environment, which is all heavily debated on its own. We're not even gonna get into that stuff. I don't even care about that stuff. I only care about how do you feel? How do you feel? If you're eating 20 bananas for a meal and you're bloated for the rest of the day and you don't have energy and you're losing muscle mass, well, those are measurable results. We should be paying attention to that. And if you eat a steak and you feel good and you feel satiated and you're not bloated and you're in the gym and your energy's up, like which one do you want? Let's take the emotional aspect out of it. Let's actually just look at the results and the feedback that your body is giving you and see what happens. So from that point, you know, the first year, like I said, after leaving veganism, about 95% carnivore. The past few months, I'd say the past 2 months, I have been eating more carbohydrate. I have been eating more white rice. And I told Amanda before we got on this show that I was going to mention this, but it's important to mention it in the context of why I'm doing this. I'm not telling other people to eat carbohydrate. Trust me, I'm not anti-meat at this. I'm not anti-meat all of a sudden. The reason I'm doing it is because, number one, my budget only allows me to eat pretty much the very low end of the conventional raised meat at this point. So as much as I love this meat, and trust me, I ate hundreds of conventionally raised steaks throughout this last year. And I think people can do it. I absolutely think people can do carnivore with the lower end meat. Okay. But for me, the taste was starting to become a problem. The quality of the meats was hit or miss on the sources I had available to me. So I started to incorporate more carbohydrate. It was able to fill out the rest of my calorie requirements because, like I said, I am in the gym. I work out 3 days a week. I work out very hard. I want to gain muscle mass. I want to gain size. And I'm finally doing that. So that first year of 95% carnivore, I really was fluctuating between a weight of 144 to 148. And I could not really put on any more size than the 148. I was getting stronger. My body was looking good. I actually have some awesome photos that I share on my YouTube channel over time where I show myself working out in the videos and hey, I like the way that I looked there, but I wasn't able to go beyond a certain point. And I believe that because, number one, training style, I changed that up a little bit, but also I just really wasn't able to eat as much food as I needed. The satiation of the food was so much that I was struggling to eat more than 2 meals a day. And just for me personally, I have been throwing in those carbohydrates to fill out the calorie balance a little bit. I've lowered my meat intake just a little bit so that I could sort of fill it out with the white rice. But really, fiberless to me has been the way to go. The more, the more fiber that I consume, whether it's from potatoes. So let's just compare the two right now. You got sweet potatoes and you got white rice. I love eating both of them. They both taste good to me. And sometimes I will eat sweet potato. However, if I go ahead and I eat, 400 calories worth of sweet potatoes for dinner, I will have some bloating and get some gas from that. And that's a result of the fiber, in my opinion. And I'm not saying not to eat it, but I prefer the fiberless foods like white rice and this type of thing. I think it's more benign on the body. I think it fits well within the carnivore sort of framework of how to get healthy and how to get stronger, stuff like that. So that's sort of where I am right now. I've been experimenting, like I said, the past 2 months, and things have been going very, very well. I've been gaining size. I've put on about 3 pounds in the past 2 months, which for me is very good. And again, the people who are coming to keto and carnivore lifestyle from a weight loss perspective, you guys have a very, very different need than I do. I'm coming at it from the ectomorphic skinny boy mindset. And for me, if I don't move my body and I don't work out, I will actually lose weight over time. I will actually sort of just get skinny fat. And I know that, the grass is always greener. Like the guy out there who's sitting on his computer right now, who's 300 pounds, who's struggling to lose weight his entire life, he's looking at me, he's saying, I wish that could be me. Trust me. No, you don't. For me, I'm looking at those guys and saying, I wish I could just get strong effortlessly like you. So we both have our battles to deal with, but in the framework of carnivore, I do believe it's probably the best diet that I've ever come across. And at this point, I'm very comfortable right now. I'm cruise control. I'm just basically putting on the muscle mass as I go along. I'm tweaking my training as I go along so that I stimulate the body for even more muscle growth. And hey, you see guys out there like Keto Gains and Sean Baker, who are just massive beasts consuming carnivore. So it can definitely be done. You can definitely do that. But one of the things that I noticed with Sean Baker is that he is consuming, I think he says like 4 to 6 pounds of beef a day. So that's a lot of beef. So if you can consume 4,000 plus calories a day, then more power to you. If I could afford the $20 a pound grass-fed ribeyes every meal, I would probably stick with 100% carnivore, and I'd be happy doing so. But that lower end beef, it just doesn't taste quite the same. Not every time anyways. Trust me, I've had delicious conventional steaks that taste as good as any steakhouse, but sometimes they just don't taste that good. Recently we've had this crop of beef that came through that was like, I could taste flowers in the meat, and other times I can taste a little bit of plastic in the meat. And I just know that they're not handling that low end meat with the same care as they're handling the $20 a pound steak. So again, if you want to do the 100% carnivore and you want to stick to that, especially if you have weight to lose, you're on the right path. You're going to be well taken care of as far as micronutrients. You're going to be well taken care of as far as protein balance and stuff like that. So yeah, that's pretty much where I think my presentation ends there, Amanda.
Oh, well, that's so awesome, Drew. Oh my gosh, your story is so filled. I'm sure tons of us are just excited with tons of questions.
Awesome.
First of all, it's great. Your transparency is very appreciated. There are many, many people at MeetRx that we already know came from veganism. In fact, we have an ex-vegan group, also a meeting that we have. There are plenty. So you're definitely in company that's like, but also, Sean does have quite a bit of access to meat right now. I believe he has a surplus of grass-fed meat in his home at this point. So good for him. But he also
I'll have to go pick some up. He lives like 20 minutes away.
I know. Well, actually, he might want you to do that. You should definitely reach out to him, from what I've heard. So, but yeah, I mean, he also makes it very clear to all of us. I mean, he doesn't necessarily say that meat is for everybody, but if you're dealing with health issues, that it's something you should definitely consider, if not just to eliminate as a full elimination diet to figure out what it is that's irritating you, but also afterwards, some people do decide to add things back in because that's what they wanted to do just for variety, never mind for reasons like for gains like yourself, which makes perfect sense. And Sean speaks to that often, whether it's dealing with addressing different symptoms that come up that might be addressed by adding back a little carbs, or if it's because you want, for your own health, for your own reasons, you want to add it back in. So your transparency is very, very welcome. And I'm sure there are other people in that situation. Although many of us do feel that if we could manage it, and many of us are attempting to, we'd eat beef the whole time and always.
Totally.
So
Yeah.
totally get that. But the question that does come to mind is, Drew, were you ever really a vegan? No.
Well, okay. I do want to speak to that actually, because
No,
it's a funny
please
question.
do. Yeah, it's
And
a good one.
the people who aren't, in this ex-vegan community and the vegan community as deep as I am, maybe they've came to Carnivore, they've never been a vegan. They're like, what is all this vegan? Why is it so intense over there? I want to let you guys know. So there is such a crazy, ideology going into that. And by ideology, I mean, like, it's almost like a religion, it really is a very strong sentiment that, like, once you go vegan, you need to stay vegan. If you leave veganism, you were never really vegan. How could you do that? There's almost like a additional hate for ex-vegans than there are for just regular meat eaters. Because regular meat eaters to the vegans, they're just like, they're out there living their lives. They're ignorant, you can forgive them. But once you go vegan and you leave, you're basically outcast. You're the devil. You are a liar. Everything you say is a lie. You never were really vegan. Maybe you were even paid by the meat industry to fake all of this. It's insane. And I just to sort of prove that, for those that don't know, I owned a vegan dating app. I wanted to bring vegan community together so badly that I created my own vegan dating app. I invested about $20,000 of my own money into this thing, unemployed, by the way, my own savings. I believed in this so much that I wanted to create, vegan couples. I wanted to bring community together. I moved to Hawaii to be around vegan influencers and help my whole program and everything like that. And it's insane that these statements can even be made about somebody like me who has the hard proof here. Like, there's people out there who have never even met another vegan in real life that are calling me a fake vegan. And yet here I am living in Hawaii amongst hundreds of other vegans. I hosted vegan retreats in Hawaii. I helped host 3 or 4 vegan retreats. We brought dozens of people to the island. I personally paid to be on vegan retreats myself. That's how I got into the whole Hawaii scene in the first place. And then I made the vegan dating app, which, by the way, had over 11,000 users. So it wasn't no baby dating app. This thing was actually making money, not a lot of money, but it was making money. And there was people on there using the thing. And if you were to flip through that thing, there was pages and pages and pages of people to see in the dating app. It's crazy.
That's amazing. Actually, we need a carnivore dating app, so maybe you could get on that now. No, but that's super cool. That's super cool that you did that. And at the same time, really, really upsetting that people can't just take you for your word and trust the impact you obviously had in that community. But it does speak a little bit to what you were saying also about ignoring how you feel about things and how a lot of vegans are denying what they're actually feeling physically. I mean, even your symptoms that you had. And I have someone very close to me who has colon cancer and stage 4 when they found out, and they didn't seem to notice that their colon was upsetting them for so long, or if they did, they were in denial. And I call myself fiber-free fab because I was never vegan, but I had a very healthy whole food diet that included plenty of fruits and vegetables, and it was killing me. The more intensely healthy I became, the more intensely sick I became. So
Interesting, huh?
It is, isn't it? So if you don't listen to your body, but anyway, if you're able to block out that, then you can block out the truth of other people who contributed to your community that you're defending so rapidly. But since you did mention this dating app, actually, a good question has come up in a few of our interviews, which is, how do you manage, and have you had to manage inter-diet dating?
While I was vegan, most of the people so the first few years, I was basically, like I said, I was in California by myself. I of course I lived with friends and stuff like that, but I had no vegan community here. And that was the main reason why I wanted to move to Hawaii, to be around other vegans. I'm like, I can finally be around my friends, because my friends here in California don't get it. They're people I've known my whole life. They're like, Drew's this weird vegan guy now. He's cycling 100 miles a week. Why is he doing this stupid stuff? Like, bro, you're into like going out and eating burritos and shooting guns and stuff like that. Like, why are you doing this? they didn't get it. So going to Hawaii, I was around community there that was doing the same stuff. And yeah, I basically was able to date within my vegan community. And there was some people that came along the way that were not vegan that I did like, date or whatever, but it wouldn't have lasted. I know for sure it wouldn't have lasted. I would have wanted them to be vegan 100%. Because then comes into the question, what happens if you go all the way? What happens if you get married? What happens if you have kids? Your kids going to be vegan? This type of stuff starts to like creep into the mentality. You're just like, I'd rather just meet a vegan person off the bat. And you're also under the spell of veganism where you're thinking to yourself, well, obviously this person is smart enough to realize that veganism is the way. So therefore I can trust them more. Therefore, we're just on the same wavelength more, and we're just going to get along better. It's almost like your foot's already in the door basically because you're both vegans. It's like, hey, you're vegan too. Like, let's do this thing, So, yeah, I think it's possible, but I noticed, and actually I modeled my vegan dating app based on research I did on the Jewish dating community because it's so similar. There's I can't remember the name right now for some reason. JDate.com, which is a very big Jewish dating site at the time. And they were making buku bucks. They were making like $13 million a year or something like that on a bad year. And I said, hey, if I can get a little piece of that pie and make it vegan, I'll be very happy. So I noticed that vegans wanted to date within their own community very similarly to the way that Jewish people tend to want to date in the same community. So I kind of used that as a model, and I said, okay, this thing can be a real thing, and that's what I did. So I noticed that in Hawaii as well. I mean, people were pretty much only dating within the vegan community at that point because you wouldn't get along in the group meetings when one person that shows up that isn't vegan. It's just kind of weird when they show up to a vegan potluck with their boyfriend or girlfriend, and there's like 30 other vegans there, and everybody's eating freaking papayas. It's like it gets a little weird. So. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I imagine now that your diet's more flexible and you yourself are more flexible, that's not interdating or interdiet dating is not so much an issue then.
I probably wouldn't date a vegan at this point. That's what that's my mentality. So if you're not vegan, then you're on the menu. But if otherwise, then no. Otherwise, I don't care.
That works. So we want to switch it up a bit. There's so many questions already in the chat, but I do want to bring it to this idea of your exploding channel and how you mustered all the courage to start sharing publicly. But not only that, although you did mention in one of your videos that you kind of have a comfort with pissing people off. So maybe that might relate to why you started coming out publicly, but you've really been a big porthole for other vegans coming out and transitioning to carnivore or just having debates about it. So what's that been like for you?
I mean, yeah, I love entertaining people. I don't love being a figure of public, like a public figure. I don't enjoy that part of it. That's not my desire to be a big YouTuber, to be a big famous YouTuber, something like that. It's why I've taken a step back for the past couple months. I've just sort of reassessed my goals with the whole thing. I love talking about this stuff in private. It's still a passion of mine. However, the conversations that I've had with people online, all these big figures, the debates I've had, this has been almost from a selfish aspect. I want to really talk to these people. I want to really have these conversations with these people. I just use my platform as a way to get them to talk to me. If we were in a room together, I would have the same conversation with them for 3 hours. But it just so happens that we have these cameras and we can broadcast to other people and other people get value out of it. I think that's great. Now, I sort of feel indebted to the community to share this information because, along my vegan journey, I got people to go vegan, and I deeply regret that. I shared all the stuff that I knew about veganism the first couple of years, and some of those people are still vegan, and they're not even getting great results these days. And I'm like, God, like, why did I do this? I am potentially harming this person because now they're of that mindset, and there's nothing I can do about it. And so now I feel like, hey, I really need to share after veganism to sort of undo the damage I did as a vegan, telling all these people that it was the greatest thing in the world, which I didn't do for the latter half of veganism, by the way, because at that point I knew that it wasn't amazing. So yeah, I think that I'm just comfortable with having these tough conversations with people. It's enjoyable to me. It's a conversation I would have with them to their face in real life. There's been like some vegan YouTubers that have made videos about me. I actually went and I typed in my name last night and I typed in like, I don't know, anti-Drew Moore videos or something like that. And there's like, you'll see me in the thumbnails. There's people who are just hating. And honestly, I just think it's funny. I've actually gone to those videos and I've taken little sound bites out of those videos and I use them on my channel. There's nothing that they can say to me. Once you've been vegan for 4.5 years and you've lived that lifestyle, you can't show me a study. You can't show me the results of another person. I did the thing. I did the 4.5 years of time. I know what it does to me. I could go back and eat vegan right now and prove it as a point if I wanted to. There's nothing that any of these people can say to me. So I know that there's other people out there who don't have that same conviction. And wow, the amount of messages that I've gotten in the DMs and on my YouTube channel that have thanked me for helping them move out of that mindset is what kept me going for so long. I even made a video where I said, hey, I called it the Vegan Prevention Hotline, where I just told people, hey, for free, I will talk to you on video chat, in private on Instagram if you want to. And my messages blew up. Like I had 10 people in the next week that wanted to talk to me. And it was crazy. So like there's all these people out there. I've gotten women who are like 65 pounds, complete skeleton emaciation, who would never be able to even show their face on social media for fear of people just lashing out at them. I mean, these are starvation victims and they're vegan and they messaged me and said, hey, like your videos help me get back to a body that's not crippled, and it's like, what else? Like, that's amazing, So I think at this point I've made my mark. I don't know if I'm going to continue, but there's other people who want to be like that big famous celebrity type person. I'll let them do that. And I'll step aside if that's what they want to do.
Well, I mean, your voice is definitely appreciated in the community, especially for helping people like that girl that you just mentioned. Some of the questions in the chat actually have to do with that. So one of the questions was, have you had vegans who want help incorporating animal products? As you just mentioned, you have. But if so, where did you start in helping them get comfortable with eating meat again? There's one woman in the chat, for example, well, those are for people who want to get started. So we'll start with that actually. For vegans who are actually approaching you and interested, how do you make them more comfortable with it?
Yeah, so there's like a sticking point. There's 2 sticking points. The first one is like, what's my first meal? What should my first meal be? I'm scared. I don't know what to buy. I don't even know what to cook. Maybe they're like a young person living with their family still. They're like 17, 18 years old. They don't know what to do. They've been vegetarian for 3 or 4 years or vegan for 4 years or whatever. And these people, like they're literally at the beginning of their lives. They have no idea what the first step is to actually go into eating animal foods. So for those people, I say, hey, and this is what I tell for everybody. Like, hey, eggs and fish are easily palatable. They're less scary, if you've been vegan and you're brainwashed and all this stuff, like, how about you just go eat? I tell them, this might sound crazy. I tell some people to go eat ice cream. I'm like, just go buy a pint of ice cream with dairy. It has dairy in it, because there's a mental switch for people. They're so guilt-ridden and shame-ridden that they won't even physically be able to get that bite of steak and fish and eggs to their mouth. They just can't do it. So I'm like, let's get it in your body somehow, get the dairy in your body somehow. Go have a couple bites of ice cream. That's not scary, right? And so once you break the seal, once you're like, oh, I'm actually not vegan anymore, I just had that couple bites of dairy, let that sink in. It doesn't have to be overnight. Like, let that sink in. You've broken your seal. Maybe you've been vegan for 4 years. You're so proud of yourself. You have your vegan chip, your 5-year vegan chip. You got to cash that thing in, man. Just cash it in, break the seal, go have a couple bites of ice cream or whatever it takes. I don't recommend that for everybody. If you can stomach the good foods, if you can stomach a ground beef or a hamburger or something, go straight to that for sure. But those are going to be very good foods. You're going to feel a difference almost immediately. And if you don't, go back to eating plants. That's what I say. The plants will always be there for you. So you can go back, right? You're not like saying you're never going to eat, spinach again or whatever. You can eat it again if you want to, but myself and many others have seen and felt what it's like to go back to the animal foods, the very nourishing animal foods, And the feedback of your body is going to tell you what is going to ultimately be good for you or not. So that's the way that I look at it. And then the other sticking point, I mentioned 2 sticking points. The other sticking point, and this one's harder, is the emotional aspect. These people they're just like terrified. They don't, it's part of their identity. They're a vegan, they're an animal lover. They've got all these things intertwined with that vegan word, and they really don't want to give it up. I mean, imagine that you're somebody who struggles to make friends or struggles, whatever, and you get into veganism, and all of a sudden you have this built-in community that just like loves you for no reason. They're friends with you for no reason. Very cult-like. Think about it. And yeah, you don't want to give that up. You don't want to give it up. I guess I was lucky. I went into veganism as a 28-year-old man. I have lifelong friends since I was 5 years old. As much as I wanted to make vegan friends because I enjoyed the community aspect, I wasn't scared to lose anybody because I already had a foundation of friends and family that I could rely on till the day I die. And so I wasn't coming at it from the perspective of like, oh my God, like this wonderful world is going to be taken out from underneath of my feet. I was looking at it like, you have to get healthy. You're not going to enjoy anything in life unless you're healthy. So, yeah.
I love your strategy. I think it's a great strategy. I mean, as much as just going back to your first sticking point, the strategy of getting people to have delicious foods, if that's what works, I think that's very, very smart advice. So going to your second sticking point, for those ethical vegans, one of the people in our chat, one of the members has said that her son is a vegan for ethical reasons. And she'd love to know if you have any suggestions about how to help him through that, because ethical is his sticking point.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I'm sorry. Like that's a very tough one. You're going to have to fight fire with fire on that one. You're going to have to fight with well-researched evidence, stuff that people like Sean Baker puts out, talking about how the ethics are actually not as ethical as these people believe. And if you can get him on a few of his points, he may start to reconsider, but it may not happen overnight. And again, if it's your son and he's very young, I don't know his age, I'm assuming he's young, but the younger that veganism gets people, the worse, because it becomes a part of their young identity. It becomes something that they attach to, and young people, that's just what they do. It's going to be like a phase basically. And there's nothing that anybody can do to take them out of it. And that's a really hard thing to accept. But I would do your research and just, if there's some things that you hear him say about, whatever the ethics are, like these animals are mistreated, or like, the cows are injected with B12 or whatever, like you have to start digging deep and learning for yourself, that some of these things that the vegans preach are actually not standard practice in most of the cow slaughterhouses. And yeah, at the end of the day, we're killing animals and we're eating them. We are. Now, what I tell ethical people is we did not choose our biology. We did not choose to be a human being that absolutely needs, without a shadow of a doubt, nourishing animal foods to perform our best. If we're willing to accept subpar performance in life by consuming only plant foods, then so be it. But that's a choice that the vegans need to make for themselves. And that's something that they should be preaching to the world and saying, we know it's doing damage to us. We know it's not as healthy as eating at least some nourishing animal foods. So, that's the way that we need to approach it. We need to just be very realistic about what our biology requires. Ethics or not, we have a certain intestinal tract. We do not have multiple stomachs. We do not have a cecum. We do not have bacteria that breaks down plant fibers like a freaking cow does. These are just the way that our biology is. And when you look at the very hard facts of it all, and you don't look at the vegan facts, because trust me, they have their own like science they've invented to combat all this information, but the rest of the world that actually just looks at the black and white details of it will tell you otherwise. So yeah, you've got to get research. You got to fight fire with fire. Just keep it quiet until you know what you're talking about, and then you start hitting them with the facts. One
of our members said, yes, fight fire with fire, like Lear Keith. She's such a good example of that. Yeah, what you're saying is very, it's having an impact on
I
people,
mean,
definitely.
look, there's how I personally knew 3 or 4 10+ year vegans that went back to animal foods after I stopped because I showed them my results. I was like, this is I'm doing better, guys. And they knew me not to be like a BSer. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't in it for the ethics, so they kind of trusted what I said because it was more based on like the reality. Now, uh, yeah, 10+ years. Why would you be willing to give up 10+ years doing something that you believe to be ethical and that you believe to be healthy, unless it worked? Because look, they could have tried the animal foods and then gone back to eating plants and be like, oh wow, that was a waste of my time. That month that I was eating animal foods, I totally regret it. And I'm so much happier being vegan again, and I'm so much healthier being vegan again. None of them did that. They all left veganism and didn't regret it one bit. They're actually not as outspoken as I am, but in closed doors are like, yeah, we definitely appreciate those animal foods. Like we incorporate them all the time. And one of the girls, Megan Elizabeth, who's another huge YouTuber who's been around forever, who used to promote a raw vegan diet. And I lived with her personally for 2 years in Hawaii. We lived together in the same house. She always struggled with weight. She always had like a little bit of soft chub around her belly. She had the bigger arms. And I saw a lot of other girls struggle with that too. So, she just couldn't lose that weight. And she was somebody I saw put in the work. She went to the gym, she ran, she ate super clean and healthy. She couldn't lose that weight. She absolutely could not lose that weight. She was so scared of weighing herself on the scale because it was messing with her mentally. Like that's so weird to me. Like the number on the scale shouldn't have anything to do with how you feel about yourself. But I know it affects a lot of people. But if you're on the right diet to begin with, like guess what? It's the scale is your friend all of a sudden because it's working in your favor. If you see that number going down and your goal is to lose weight and you're smashing in steaks every day and you're eating good and you feel very satiated, you're going to be jumping on the scale every day. So, and by the way, her physique is phenomenal now. About a year after leaving veganism, she sent me some pictures the other day. I mean, she's looking great. Like, I mean, the results are in. You know what I mean? So
That's excellent. Actually, that's one of your favorite lines I heard you mention, that you can't debunk my experience. So
yeah.
people, if people focused on their experience more than anything. But apart from the whole ethical argument that people find themselves enmeshed in and their egos enmeshed in, there's also this huge push right now. I mean, it's a huge push that we have going on, and like an amped up vegan agenda, like even the
Mm-hmm.
Oscars the other day with Joe Queen. Sorry. Joaquin
Joaquin.
Phoenix. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
um, uh, I wonder, do you have any thoughts about this push and about censorship that's also coming on the other end, about, even carnivores are being censored? I know you said you're moving away from being the voice you have been, but has the censorship had an impact on you at all?
It hasn't had an impact on me, but I know like, Instagram, Sean Baker's been censored for like putting lion photos up. But like, if you were to go to some National Geographic website, I'm sure they're showing equally graphic stuff and it's hail as beauty and stuff like that. So, what I noticed is the vegans, although smaller in number, they are mighty in their voice. So like if I had a guest on that they particularly didn't like, and this guest was, because I have a small channel, so if the guest was very big and this guest was going to attract a lot of attention, which happened a lot, all the vegans who hated that person would come into my channel and they would flag my content. So it did have an impact on the monetization of some of the streams that I created. Of course, I kept them up. I didn't care that I was demonetized for those particular streams, but I just saw that there was definitely some unfairness going on there because, like, hey, they have a bigger community. They can come over and silence me just because they're angry and they want to just hit the dislike button and flag it for, I don't know, inappropriate content or whatever you want to call it. But, guys like Sean Baker are smart. He's creating his own website, his own platform. They can't say anything here. You can't demonetize or deplatform this. It's raw internet, private content. And the people who are coming here for that information are going to get the best information that's not filtered because of stupid YouTube or whatever the case is,
Absolutely. Wow, that's really intense though, to hear, like, to know how they kind of swarm you and
Oh yeah, that there's
start
these people
recording.
have no lives. They're the worst. Some of them are the worst of the worst. You know, I'm not saying vegans are like the worst of the worst, but the internet troll vegans, wow, you have a toxic concoction there of people who are like religiously motivated almost to come and destroy you and make content about you and all this stuff. And you see this all the time. Like a lot of these vegan influencers, when they were vegan, people weren't really making hate content about them. But as soon as they go ex-vegan, whoa, they dig through every video. They're putting up. They're spending hours each day making content about some of these ex-vegans and just to talk negative about them and try to defame them. And you know, I mean, some of the stuff is basically borderline slanderous. I mean, some of the stuff that people have said about Sean Baker, you know, I've gotten into a little bit of those verbal wars with some of these people, and they're even on the meat side. You know, some of these carnivore community, they're accusing some of the meat influencers like Sean Baker and Paul Saladino of being like bought out by the conventional meat industry and stuff. It's the stupidest thing in the world. Like that cannot be proven. There's no way they can prove that. First of all, there's no evidence to even suggest that. However, some of these people have big platforms, and they're even everybody's trying to protect their financial investment, and they want to become the bigger voice in the community. And I just know over time that people's personal experience, whether it takes them 2, 3, 5, 10 years, is going to eventually win the battle. And I kind of am just like, let people do what they want to do. The people I feel most sorry for are like the people in their, you know, their 50s and 60s or whatever that are coming to diet. They've been eating like the standard American diet forever, and they just have they grew up in a world where nutrition information just wasn't really a thing. And so they're at the, you know, they're nearing the end of like what youthful health can give you for free. You know, now they're in their 50s and 60s. They're like very overweight. They're having these serious health complications. And it's unfair to them because they just had no information. People like me and people like the vegans, like we're probably going to figure it out within a few years. But even if we just listen to our own bodies and don't even listen to the content online, because we're in that zone, we're in that nutrition zone, you know, I was only going to let myself get so far out of whack. You know, yeah, veganism messed my teeth up a little bit. Yeah, it gave me some gas, but I wasn't going to let it, you know, take me down all the way. You know, I got enough of those red flags and I was out of there.
It's great that you're out of there, thankfully. And someone in the chat said, it's a cult and you will be shamed if you leave, the preferred punishment of cults. So that explains why people can spend tons of time shaming those people who come out. But speaking of where you're at now, a lot of people have questioned in the chat. So where are you at now? How do you see yourself eating moving forward? And also attached to that, one of the questions in the chat was, she totally understood what you were saying about not being able to handle necessarily the low quality of meat, but what do you think of changing up meat for fat as energy for food, from food instead of carbs? Has that been something that you've considered?
Yeah, great question. So towards the end of, before I officially gave up my 95% carnivore, I said, okay, you know what? I need to eat more food. It's gone on too long. I need to gain weight. So I said, all right, let's keep it carnivore. I'm going to do the butter thing. I'm going to be just slabbing butter on all my steaks from now on. And I'm going to incorporate honey around my workout time. So I had some squirts of honey before my workouts and after my workouts. And I was noticing it was like giving me a little bit of a better pump. And I was like, okay, that's cool. That's cool. And by the way, I was salting my foods like crazy. So I know there's this big argument about sodium can give you the same pumps as carbs. Okay, I don't know. That's debatable. But for me, I just needed more calories. So what I was doing was I was basically eating 2 meals a day plus a snack. All right. So I was starting to slab on the butter to those 2 meals a day. Well, all that happened was I became so hyper satiated from the 2 meals, I couldn't even eat that third snack. Some days I didn't even want to eat my dinner. I was like so full, not full, but like, you know, no desire to eat all day because I was the butter. It just like, God, like that. If you took a stick of butter into the desert with you and a gallon of water, you could probably survive for like, I don't know, 3 weeks or something. And you wouldn't be hungry. it's amazing how satiating butter is and how much nutrition, I guess, is inside of that butter that it just takes care of everything. So again, I almost lost more weight attempting that because I was just so satisfied. It's almost like I need to be less satisfied with my food so that I can eat more food and therefore put on more calories and gain more weight. It's a weird thing. I know a lot of people aren't going to get that, but now when I eat, I've lowered my amount of meat a little bit. My standard used to be a pound of meat per meal, about 1,000 calories, about 100 grams of protein. That's kind of like my benchmark. It's basically what a ribeye is. And so I halved that. So now I eat about half a pound of meat, and then I try and fill out the rest of the calories with white rice. And yeah, I can just smash that. I can eat that so fast, and it's very enjoyable. And within a few hours, I'm hungry again. I can do it again, and then I eat a snack. And some days I even eat 4 meals a day, which is great. I know some people are coming at this from the intermittent fasting direction, and I was all into that for the first part of the year. But for me, again, I just couldn't eat enough calories to even maintain my weight. Yes, I could stay fit. I'm sure I was healthy. But if you want to gain weight, you got to eat a little more food. So
that makes a lot of sense. Again, eating intuitively, very important. You got to go with what your body needs, right?
Yep. I want to make a point. This is like super critical that I mention this because I know there's a lot of, this is off topic from everything, and I will get to the questions immediately. But I wanted to mention this in my main presentation. Guys, spices are low-key the worst thing that you can eat in terms of IBS. If you're a person struggling with digestive issues, you need to hear this. Like, this is the most important minute of my entire thing here. Spices, maybe even worse than fiber, will mess your gut up so bad. Like the one of the main things about the whole meat, salt, water mantra is the salt part, not using any spices. Yeah, salt might get a little boring and you might want to add things over time, but pay very close attention to what you're adding to your foods because it's a cumulative effect. You know, I eat Lowry's seasoning, like the most basic Lowry's, seasoning out there. And when I first went carnivore, I had perfect digestion. I was adding that Lowry's on there, right? Lowry's, every steak, everything that I was eating, Lowry's. Well, I got so used to the salt factor that I kept bumping up the Lowry's to get more salt because I was enjoying the flavor. I got to a point where even the Lowry's was starting to give me some sort of negative digestive effects. As soon as I cut all the spices out, I went back to salt. Amazing digestion. And even to this day, amazing digestion. I'm very careful about what I add to my foods. There's certain seasonings that I can handle and there's certain seasonings that I can't. It doesn't even have to be spicy. Like cinnamon, for instance, can really wreck my gut. It might wreck your gut. Like, pay attention to those spices that you're eating. Those flavors come at a cost. That's all I got to say about it.
That's huge, though. Thank you. A lot of people don't have that knowledge about spice or how it can impact them. But you're right. The whole salt beef thing is to avoid spices, and it does have an impact for a lot of people.
Yeah,
so it's good
huge.
You said that.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the chat here. Oh, someone's asking if you have thoughts about raw primal.
Raw primal. So basically eating carnivore, but all raw? Is that what raw primal would be considered?
I believe that's what they're referring
to. For me, I think that if I can't eat enough calories on a cooked meat diet, I think there's probably no way I'm going to eat enough calories on a raw meat diet. So, I think that raw meat is great. I think it digests great. Raw fish, for instance. I've even eaten a little raw beef. Yes, I've eaten raw liver. It's okay. It's whatever. It's not the most enjoyable thing to me on a flavor standpoint, but it comes down to how much of it can you eat on a daily basis. Are you going to actually be able to fill out your caloric needs for it? If you can, then great. If you can't, then great. But I've always been told by a lot of people like, oh, it's the next level in digestion and this and that. My digestion's already good enough, so I'm not really hunting down further performance in the digestive angle. Now, do I think it's healthier or something long-term? Maybe, but I think, again, it just goes down to the results. Look at the results. Throw out the ideology and the magic. I call it the magic because it's like people assign magic to some of this diet stuff. And what I mean by that is, like, let's say I'm eating 2,000 calories of steak a day and that's all I can eat, cooked steak. 2,000 calories a day of cooked steak. I can't gain weight. There's somebody out there, I'm sure of it, that will be like, oh, if you ate 1,000 calories of raw steak, then you would just explode. You would have this statuesque physique. You would grow, your muscles would fill up, and you would have all this amazing energy and your digestion would be perfect. It's like, okay, like that sounds magical to me because you're eating half the amount of calories, raw or not. You still got the calories to deal with. So like, don't completely ignore that, you know? We can't just completely reinvent the wheel here. There's still some foundation in conventional wisdom and conventional nutrition knowledge that still applies to even the carnivore diet, you know, caloric intake being one of them. Yes, I realize that insulin plays a huge part. And I realize that there's these hormones that come into play when you start introducing carbs and fat together and stuff like that. But that's like the smaller picture. Like, think of the bigger picture here. You know, the calories is really probably going to be a bigger factor in that. Anyways, that's just kind of my take on it. So I don't really have a take on it. Raw, if it works for you, go for it. I think it's cool, but I don't see myself eating raw meat all day long and loving life.
That's great. There's another question here that kind of relates because I think it's similar in that they're asking, well, can a person be on the carnivore diet and skinny and still healthy? And I'll leave it to you to answer, but I think what you're saying is that your focus is on gains, and that's why you decided to depart a little bit from carnivore. And adding, I want to also add that you mentioned it's fiberless. So that's really interesting that you're choosing your carbs, you know, specifically so that they're fiberless. But any thoughts on someone being skinny and healthy on carnivore?
I think it's the diet to be skinny and healthy. I think let's compare it to veganism. Let's compare it to being skinny as a vegan. Well, I would almost argue that being skinny as a vegan means that you're not getting enough nutrition because to be healthy as a vegan, you almost need to overeat. You know, you need to eat at the capacity of your digestive ability because you're barely getting any of those nutrients into your system as it is. So you don't want to be eating a smaller amount of it. Now you're not absorbing any of it anyways, and you're eating a very small amount of it. Now, as a meat eater, if you're eating to satiation, I do believe eating to natural hunger levels is key here. Do not be trying to get skinny by eating less than you're naturally hungry for. Of course, if you're, you know, morbidly obese, I may have a different recommendation there. I know there's a lot of people who do like the snake diet stuff. I think his work is incredibly interesting and he's cool. And he does have a good deep knowledge of like, okay, he does these like 500 calorie every other day fasting refeed type of things. That's kind of extreme. Now, I'm not saying not to do that stuff. You experiment with whatever you want by all means, but on an ongoing basis, on a basis of like, what are you going to do as a regular person in the regular world with 2 kids and a job? You got to eat food. And so, you know, if you're eating to natural appetite and that's 2 meals a day or 3 meals a day or whatever it is, and you're staying lean and you're staying skinny, and you're okay with how you look, then I think you're probably healthy, especially if you're eating the higher quality animal foods, especially if you're including things like butter, and you're getting all these like super, the fat soluble vitamins and stuff like that. I think that you're more than healthy. I think that you're basically peak optimal health. And go look at the way that, you know, tribal people typically look. You know, they're the ones that are well fed and stuff like that. Like they're basically lean. They look good. You know, yeah, I think that if you're skinny as a vegan, you're probably lacking in nutrition. I think if you're skinny as a carnivore that eats high quality animal foods, you're probably very, very healthy.
Very, very clear distinction. Thank you for that. There's still some questions here that we have for you in the chat, but I do want to open it up so that if there's any members who want to start asking questions on camera, you're welcome. Please raise your hand and I will unmute you so that you can ask Drew a question. But meanwhile, until I see any hands up, kind of want to go back to this conversation about your veganism again. Actually, specifically, we've heard about people that you were living with and how they reacted, some of them moving out when you decided to become carnivore, which is an interesting reaction. Fair. How about people in your life? Not necessarily vegans, actually. Like, how have people in your life been reacting? Are there any people in your own family or close to you that have been inspired to take on carnivore? Not necessarily leaving veganism, but just based on your experience?
The only person who's even because when I went carnivore, I wasn't like, I had learned my lesson from veganism. I wasn't pushing anything. I was like, I'm doing this thing for myself. I'm going to document it as like a piece of work, basically, for the internet, and myself out of curiosity. But I didn't try to get anybody to go carnivore at all. I just like, I'm hands off at that point. Now, they're happy I left veganism for sure, especially extended family and stuff like that. People who only see me like once a year. So it's interesting when somebody only sees you once a year around the holidays or whatever, and they see the slow decline as you're a vegan, and they just see your face sucking out and getting emaciated. They see you losing all this weight. They don't know what's going on in between. They don't know that you did a juice fast. All they see is like, you lost 20 pounds this year and you look like hell. They don't know what you've been through. They don't know all the details around it. So they're looking at it from a very like black and white, basic snapshot in time perspective. And then they see you a year later after eating animal foods for a year, and they're like, you look so much better. Like, thank God you left that diet. They're so happy. Everybody's happy in my normal life that I went back to animal foods. And now it's just like, whatever. It's been a year and a half. You know, people aren't talking to me about it too much anymore. It's just kind of a normal thing now. Drew eats meat again. It's cool. And I mean, people still make their jokes. Remember when you were vegan? It's kind of like a joking, funny thing. But yeah, the people in Hawaii that, you know, that's kind of a funny story. They got so upset with me. You know, this guy was 40 years old. One of my roommates, he lived there with his girlfriend. He had some of his stuff in the living room, and I started cooking steak, and he was like mad. Like I thought he was going to want to like fight or get in my face or something. And it was a very awkward couple of days. And yeah, basically he literally took his items from the living room, stomped off, because we had like wood floors, a raised foundation, like stomped into his room, put all his bags and everything into his room. And he shut all the doors from the kitchen all the way to his bedroom so that none of the meat smell would get into his stuff. And I was just like, wow, this guy has lost it. And yeah, within a week, they found another place to live, and they were out of there. They couldn't even handle the food being in the fridge, like near their food. It was crazy.
Wow, that's very intense. Actually,
Yeah.
that leads to another question in the chat perfectly, but it also reminds me that ever since I have been carnivore, anytime I'm out, and if it comes up in conversation, somehow someone is searching for me. Like the other day, someone randomly found my number and called me just to send me videos about how great veganism is. And it's like, I mean, today someone started trying to debate with me on WhatsApp through a friend because a friend told a friend, and they were like sending that. And I thought, wow, like why do you care so much that I'm eating meat? Just to let me know I'm going to be unhealthy. But all those years where I wasn't unhealthy, I mean, when I wasn't healthy, they had nothing to say. So
Totally. I have an experience like that too. People who aren't even vegan yet arguing for the validity of veganism to me after watching things like Game Changers. How about that? You have people that that aren't even vegan that are telling me that veganism is better. They can't even do it yet. They've tried veganism. They still can't even, they can't even last a week. And they're telling me 4.5 years ex-vegan that veganism is still the way. I'm like, what kind of serious brainwash? I'm worried for that person because they're literally brainwashed without even being able to do the diet for 2 weeks of time. Like, how can you, they're arguing on behalf of something they don't even have experience in. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is. It is. Absolutely. That's exactly the word for it, I would say. But it's an experience that we're having, many of us. So another thing so as you were saying about your roommate and how he responded, one of the questions in the chat that came up was, do you feel that there's a potential for violent vegans attacking carnivores? Is this something?
You know, vegans are, yeah, sure, there is. But you got to remember that vegans are some of the weakest, mentally weak, physically weak individuals on the planet. Like, they might feel a certain way and talk their mouth off on the internet, but in real life, these are not the people who are stepping up to the plate and doing anything. So yeah, like it's possible, but out of any enemies to have, vegans are the least threatening to me. Like they're not going to do anything. You know, they're one of the weakest. It's like I don't know. It's like if a yoga, you know, in, I don't know, like I don't even know what to call it, but basically a very small, like weak tribe against you, like the weakest tribe in town, you know, and they're the ones that are talking the most crap, and they're the ones making the most threats. It's like you're really not going to worry about it if it actually comes down to it. So I don't think anybody's really in danger or anything like that if that's the case. Although I did have somebody message me yesterday and say, "Hey Drew, there's been people talking and saying that they thought you were taken out by the CIA because because you haven't made any content in a while." And I just thought that was hilarious. I'm like, I don't think the CIA knows who I am. Trust me.
That is hilarious. That is really funny.
Yeah.
But it's good. It's good that you're not concerned. That's good to hear.
No.
So, I mean, just to top it off, since you do talk about gains and you did mention your physical exercise and your interest in working out, do you want to share anything about your workout routine or anything, how that's changed or how it is?
Yeah, sure. So when I first when I went to Hawaii and I was still vegan, I really wanted to build a high quality physique on calisthenics. I was just like, it's something that I wanted to do for fun. So calisthenics is using all your own body weight, and I bought these Olympic rings and a couple pieces of equipment. So I was out there in the backyard just working out like day in, day out, probably 4 or 5 days a week, an hour a day. And I got some okay results. I looked okay at the time. Like I said, I was still very light. But I just had this internal feeling that it wasn't getting better. But now that I'm back in the gym, I am working out 3 days a week, and I am working out full body routines. And I've tweaked this over the past 6 to 8 months, and I've really found something that's working very, very good for me. Along with switching to the carbs, the white rice and whatnot, I switched this routine at the same time. So maybe some of you out there are saying, "Oh, well, it's the routine that changed." Well, I don't know. It's debatable, but what I do is 3 days a week, full body routine. I focus on the big lifts, so like overhead press, bench press, squat, deadlift, and then I do some little accessory movements like curls and stuff like that. And yeah, I focus on 3 sets of each body part, 3 sets of each exercise, I mean. And at first I was only doing 2 sets. It wasn't enough volume. I wasn't making any type of gains. I was focusing too much on strength stuff, lifting too heavy. It was actually causing me some injuries. They would heal quickly, but I was in and out of the gym. It was annoying. So I needed to figure out a way to not get injured so much. So I increased the volume to actually 4 sets each exercise. And I was doing too much volume. I was exhausted. Like after my workouts, I would literally be so tired. And then each day, I mean, I was barely recovering. So I bumped it down to 3 sets, which is a nice middle ground. And then on that 3rd set, I really focus on going till failure. So, you know, what that means is basically the first 2 sets are almost like a warm up to that 3rd set. I definitely get the muscles pumping and I make it difficult for myself. But on that 3rd set, I really make an attempt to burn. You know, I go to failure, and yeah, everything is like very pumped, and I've gained like 2 or 3 pounds in the past 2 months because of it, and it's been very, very good. Yeah, that's actually like an optimal weight gain. If you're like a natural bodybuilder, natural lifter, or whatever, 2 pounds a month is said to pretty much be as good as it gets without gaining too much fat. And definitely there's starting to be some physique changes showing, and I'm very happy with the results right now.
That's great. Congratulations on your gains. That's super.
I'll give you guys a little double bicep pump here.
Oh, nice.
That's my signature. I do it on my channel all the time. There's people who request it. So if there's any of you out there, I had to do it for you.
Thank you. I'm sure many people appreciate that. Not just myself. Okay, so we have a question from Taryn.
Hey, Drew. What's up? Very cool story. Really interesting to hear your experience. I was just curious, like, what was your transition like from, 4-year vegan to carnivore? Was there a lot of negative symptoms, or like, how'd it go for you?
First of all, thank you for sitting there. I've seen your picture on the side this entire time. This is the first time I've gotten to watch a viewer watch me from their home for the whole hour that I'm talking, which is still crazy to me. But
hope it's not creepy.
No, it's actually really cool. I love when people message me and stuff like that, and they want to chat. Like, yeah, I'm all for communicating with people privately, maybe even more than publicly at this point. But anyway, I'm happy to do this, by the way, Amanda. I'm here as long as you need me. And Taryn, yeah. So you asked about transition, if there was any negative side effects. I found absolutely none. Like I said, finding out that the spices were still a factor along the way was a little bit surprising to me, because my digestion was significantly better than it was as a vegan, but there was hit and miss days where I'd like, wait a minute, like I'm doing the fiberless, I'm eating all meat, and then I still have like maybe a bout of diarrhea or something like that. And I just have a sensitive stomach, I guess. I have sensitive colon or intestines or whatever it is. And, I'll go eat something like cinnamon or whatever, like that you think is not even going to have an effect on you. It's like, there's no calories in it. There's like nothing in cinnamon, right? It's just like this powder. And then all of a sudden you're hitting the toilet an hour later. Yeah. So, yeah, nothing really. I will say that transitioning back to carbohydrates a bit has one negative effect that I don't love. I'm peeing all the time. That's annoying. As a carnivore, like, you don't really need that much liquid. That's what I found. I wasn't drinking that much water, and I didn't feel like I was dehydrated. I just didn't need that much water, and thus I wasn't going to the bathroom and peeing all the time either. So it was kind of cool. But yeah, so I don't think there was any negative side effects, anything to really get used to. I know of other people who do have issues. They have trouble digesting the fats, especially those that have been vegan for very long periods of time, that have specifically focused on low-fat diets. Megan Elizabeth, that girl I mentioned, she had issues transitioning back over. She had I think gallbladder pain or something like that. And it took her about 6 months to sort of like ease in, but she's somebody who was doing probably 10% of her calories from fat for like 10 plus years as a vegan. That's a very abrupt change.
Yeah.
And for me, I was doing about 30% calories from fat my final year as a vegan. So I was already kind of like pre-transitioning into eating fat again as a vegan, which most vegans are eating like almost no fat. I mean, I was living amongst people who were eating literally 5% of their calories from fat year round. And, they wouldn't even eat avocados and stuff like that. So like, wow. That's what, yeah. So does that answer it, do you think?
Yeah. Perfect. Thanks.
Cool.
So, okay, great. Well, I appreciate that you said that you have time to stick around with us, but I do know there are members that probably have been hanging in there and definitely have other things to do. But okay. I do have another question before we let you go. You did mention that you're not going to be necessarily on social media as much. So someone in the chat was asking, where do you see yourself in the future off social media? What are your life goals outside of the diet?
Yeah, I just need to get my financials in order. I've taken like a 5-year sabbatical off working basically for corporations or anything like that. I was laid off back in 2016 or something like that. And I had a little nest egg of cash saved away, so I wasn't worried at all. I had the desire to like live my life as a vegan basically and potentially pursue YouTube at that time. So I was like, all right, you guys are laying me off with some pay. Like, I'm going to take the next few months off and figure this out. So that's when I moved to Hawaii. Like 6 months later, I launched my vegan dating app. That went well, but then I had to shut it down last year. So that's officially gone. At this point, yeah, I'm basically focusing on investing my time and investing any funds that come my way into like the financial markets and stuff like that. So hopefully in the future I can get into trading. I'm like really, really putting my time into learning stocks and stuff like that, but I need money to put into those markets first. So I'll be going back to a regular 9-to-5 grind my life job, just like everybody else, most likely, although it's very hard to find work these days, let me tell you.
That sounds wonderful. Good use of your time, big time. Very good use of your time. It's too bad that dating app didn't work out because I'm sure many vegans definitely appreciated that while it was around. But What a success to start an app. That's pretty huge. And we wish you all the best in everything you take on next. We have so appreciated your authentic and transparent sharing and the courage that you give to so many other people that are struggling to escape veganism and that stronghold on them. And it's just been our pleasure to meet with you, Drew Morgan.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys, all your time. And I look forward to this going up on the channel because my community will probably love to just like see me on here and everybody who's stuck around. So yeah, feel free to message me anytime. Anybody who has any questions, if you guys are like not social media people or whatever, just contact me at Instagram at Drew Morg. You guys can talk to me in the DMs and I'll probably be happy to answer your questions.
That's amazing. Thank you again to everyone for meeting with us today. And as he just said, you can find him on Instagram. You can also find Drew Morgan on his YouTube channel at Drew Morg. Mm-hmm. So thank you again. Have a good day. Feel fab, everybody.